Paul from Kelso Cooks again. Today I'm going to show you how to make my wonderful, sexy chocolate fondant. Okay? Now these, believe it or not, are so simple, so tasty and so effective. So first what I'm going to do is preheat my oven to 200 degrees. So we'll just pop that on. And then what I'm going to do is melt my butter and chocolate down. Okay, so what we have is 150 grams of unsalted butter. We've got 50 grams of white chocolate and 100 grams of 70% cocoa dark chocolate. Okay, so we're going to melt these down into, we've got a pot here with a heat-proof bowl over it and some simmering water underneath. Now you don't want this water to go any more than simmering, and you certainly don't want to touch in the bottom of your bowl, otherwise it's going to burn the chocolate and it's going to taste like shit. Okay, so in first goes our butter. And then we're going to break our chocolate in. So say we've got the white chocolate. I just find if you use all cocoa chocolate, it can be very strong and quite bitter. So at least this white chocolate will add a wee bit of sweetness into it. So dark chocolate. And if we just break it up into the same size, roughly same size pieces, it'll all melt around at the same time. Okay, so that's all our ingredients into the bowl. Just give it a wee stir around. Now you want to keep a good eye on this here. You definitely don't want the chocolate, as I say, to be burning. So we can just let that gently. Right, okay, in the meantime what we're going to do while the chocolate is melting is we're going to get our very wonky board and we're going to butter some of the pudding molds. Now you can use these molds here or you can use ramekins. Now the timings is 4 to 6 minutes for these molds, or if you're using ramekins you're going to be talking more 12-15 minutes. Okay? Okay, so what we want to do is get a little bit of butter, just butter at room temperature, and just sort of mess it around on a wee small plate like this, and then into your mold, going right round like so, and we do that for each of them. I'll give it a decent coating of butter right round and on the bottom. Now, that's all our molds buttered. So what we want to do here is get a little bit of flour, and I find the best way is just take a pinch of flour, take your mold and just roughly sprinkle in like so on each one. You don't want too much now. So one pinch of flour should near enough do the whole lot. It's just a dusting. Now, and then just turn them out, slap them out on the board. Okay, so we just keep an eye on our chocolate and butter mix. As I say, give it a wee stir around, make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom or burning. That's perfectly melting slowly, that's what you want. Now, what you want to do as well is get little pieces of parchment paper, cut them into small discs and pop them into the bottom of your ramekins or mould, whichever you're using. It just means that it definitely won't stick to the bottom of it. Okay, so that's that done. Now our chocolate here has melted down, so you want to take it off the heat. And turn that off. And what I'll let you do is just carefully take the bowl off the water, because otherwise it's still going to be simmering away and heating. You want this to cool slightly. Now when I say slightly, for a few minutes roughly. Okay. Now in our other bowl we are going to crack in 3 eggs. And if a little bit of shell goes in, which of course it did, you just fish it out. And we're going to give these a small whisk up. And we'll add in, we have got 75 grams of caster sugar here. And whisk that into it. Make sure it incorporates well. Okay, so the next step is to take our chocolate mix and whisk it in to the egg mix. I'll just get all this sorted out. Just scoop around with their spatula. That's fine like that. And give this a good whisk around. You'll see it starting to come together. It'll just become a little bit tighter of itself.
Just maybe lift it forward.
Yeah. Now you can see it starting to tighten there. It's not as runny. Now that's perfect. Now the next part of the recipe involves folding 1 tablespoon of plain flour in. Now, let me just get it. Now you can just gently, when we talk about folding in, you want to get a spatula and you just sort of lift it. You don't want to stir it too much. So definitely don't whisk it. Just use a spatula and just come down and back up again. Around, down and back up again. You can sift the flour in if you want, it'll make it a little bit finer, but I find if you just sprinkle it on, it's fine. Just till it's incorporated like so. Okay, you want it still a little bit grainy. The next step then is to pour our chocolate mix into the molds or ramekins, whichever you're using. So I find the best way is just to pour this into a jug, and then it's handier pour it into the molds. We don't make as much of a mess. That's plenty in there. Now you only want to come just about 3/4 way up on these. Okay, so, and that's the last one there now. So about 3/4 way up. Now, so we just put these on a baking tray, like so, and then these are popped into the oven. As I say, in these molds, they're popped in for 4 to 6 minutes, and for ramekins you're talking 12-15 minutes because it takes longer for the actual porcelain to heat up. Now, at this stage, if you wanted to make these in advance, you could pop these wee bit of cling film over the top of them, pop them into the fridge for a few hours or even overnight, and just make sure you bring them back to room temperature before you put them in the oven. So we're going to put these into the oven, and then you're going to see some sexy chocolate fondant. Okay? Okay. They're in the oven now for 4 or 5 minutes. They still weren't quite right, so we'll just give them an extra 1 minute, so they should be ready about now. And they are indeed. Now, you want them risen up around the top, but still soft to touch in the middle. Right, okay, now the way we want to work this is just take it carefully up in our hand, and it's best to actually get your plate and flip it over like so. I'll just put these others to the side. Don't seem like a complete garb. Now, what we'll do is carefully just get a bit of kitchen paper, grab a hold of the mould and just gently take it off. And that's our parchment paper, we take that off, like so. Now, you can get a little bit of cocoa powder. Now what you want is for the middle of this to ooze out onto the plate, which it does very, very nicely indeed. So there we have it, our sexy chocolate fondant. You can serve this with cream, ice cream, or just by itself, but you're definitely going to enjoy this, and it's a crowd pleaser. So recipe is on the site www.thesustainablelarder.com, and you can get the full list of ingredients and the recipe of how to make it. And I hope to God you enjoy it as much as I will. Talk to you soon.